I said I'd cover him a few weeks back, so here we are. The undiscovered king of counters, Denry. Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, is a legendary 4-mana Azorius 2/2 Cat Advisor creature who enters with your choice of +1/+1 First Strike or Vigilance counter, and who reads that every non-token creature that enters the battlefield under your control enters with all the counters Denry currently has on them. Oh boy. Can anybody say keyword counters? Yep, this guy goes absolutely bananas with really any form of counter you want to put on him. Avenging Hunt Bonder's double strike counters. Yes, please. Emissary of Soulfire's exalted counters. I mean, I've already mentioned this in a previous video, but yeah, hand them over. Eagle of Deliverances, or Tyrite Sanctum's indestructible counters. Don't mind if I do. How about just about everything Scavenged Brawler is? Inject it straight into my veins. Hell, even just a decent stack of 1/1 counters works nicely, especially when buoyed by the Proliferate sub-theme that every counters deck wants to play anyway. And indeed, Denry plays quite a lot of your standard counter staples, most notably your Aven Couriers, Nesting Grounds, and Ozolith family of cards. But the reason I'm mentioning these cards, which are realistically very commonplace, is that Denry actually has them pulling double duty. See, you want to stack as many different beneficial counters onto Denry as possible, but some aren't readily available to just slap onto any old guy, at least in Azorius colours, with Trample, Menace, and Hexproof being the primary examples of this. However, should you play the rare example of cards which can gain these counters in these colours, i.e. Wingfold Terran for Hexproof counters, or Crystalline Giant for Trample, Menace, and Hexproof counters again, the Ozolith Courier suite opens up a fantastic avenue for getting these difficult counters onto the lovely Mr. Klin. Special mention as well goes to Contractual Safeguard, which can not only protect stuff with shield counters natively, but also can just spread any counter you have to your entire board at instant speed. It should also bear mentioning that the Ozolith and Resourceful Defense both trigger on creatures leaving the battlefield, which means that they also synergize with an aspect of Denry's deck building, which is quite rare for a counters deck. Blink! A weird facet of the way that Denry plays is that you often want to blink your creatures that are already loaded up with a ton of counters, in essence to re-up those counters on each creature which is blinked, while also transferring the creature's existing counters to Denry, essentially to get them more counters at the time via those Ozolith-esque means. And so he actually plays a healthy smattering of blink spells. And of course, it does also mean that Denry favours interacting with blink spells that also deal with counters. Particular note going to Soul Herder and Gilryan Dunedain Protector, which give themselves and or other creatures their various counters respectively. It should be noted that while I've been off on one about building Denry all-around keyword counters, he does interact with all kinds of counters, like Fraying Line's rope counters, Oblivion Stone's fate counters, or the Humble Shield counter. The non-keyword counter I think is most valuable in this deck, however, is none of those. No, I think it's the divinity counters that you can pass around with Kindred Boon or That Which Was Taken. And you may be wondering, why? After all, they're in essence worse indestructible counters requiring Boon or Taken to give indestructible. And well, yes, they are, but they do pair very well and very nicely with those aforementioned indestructible counters to form one of my favourite win cons to play in this deck, supercharging the Myojin. For those who don't know, the Myojin are a group of 10 legendary spirits who have ridiculously overpowered abilities which can be activated by removing a counter of a certain type from themselves. Divinity counters for the originals and indestructible counters for the Neon Dynasty bunch. However, they do have a severe limiting factor. They only gain one of their respective counter on entry, and only if you cast them from your hand, which is a big deal because they are all huge mana costs. Basically, they're intended to be a big mana, big cost, one-shot win button. However, it has been well known for a while now that Proliferate breaks that one-time restriction in half because it just increases their counters whenever. And now, well, basically Denry tears away the other half of that restriction. They don't need to care where they enter from when our favourite newspaper kitty is providing them with their fuel no matter what. and frankly, far more of it than if you cast them properly. I'll tell you something for free. You have not lived until you've had 30 Blooming Dawn activations in a single turn just from Denry and an Ephemerate. So long as you're wary to use your Seeing Winds before your Blooming Dawn, and that repeated Cleansing Fires can result in some horrendously unfun board locks, the Myojin are a fantastically fun endgame for a Denry deck. And yes, that is my promised highlighting of Denry Klin. I already thought that this guy was a particularly underutilised bit of fun in the zone before digging into it, but now upon seeing the flexibility, resilience, and unique Blink and Myojin-based strategies that this guy has to offer, I genuinely think he's one of the most undervalued commanders in the game, and for keyword counters, possibly the best. New Capenna Commander really just does not miss. Oh, and yes, Spark Double on Denry does work the way you want it to. Ciao.